Yo, what's up? Avian here. Welcome back to my week 5 top 25. We had a crazy week. A lot of crazy things happened. A lot of teams lost. We had a lot of great matchups, and I'm just ready to start talking about everything and breaking it all down and just showing you guys what I think about everything that happened and my rankings in general. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright guys, so here's my top 25. I'm going to start at the top from number 1 and then go all the way to 25, explaining why I got each team where I have them. And at number 1, I have the Alabama Crimson Tide. They beat Arkansas at home. And actually, Bryce Young got hurt in this game, and he didn't return. And then the backup, what was his name, Milroe, came in, and he actually played decent for a backup. But Alabama did what I thought they were going to do. I had them winning this game. I always thought Arkansas was overrated anyway. Their defense is not good at all, and it really showed in this game. KJ Jefferson really couldn't do anything. The passes weren't really on point. The receivers weren't catching the ball. They couldn't defend the run or the pass. And just overall, it was a bad game from Arkansas. They were coming back in the third quarter, but they gave it all away when they let Milroe run 70 some yards down the field and basically score a touchdown. But yeah, that's why I have Alabama number 1. They technically beat a ranked team on the road. And number 2, I have Ohio State. Ohio State didn't particularly look that good in this game. They only had 300 or 400 some yards overall, and CJ Stroud did not look good. He was making just terrible reads, making terrible throws, bad decisions. He only had 154 yards passing, and this was against Rutgers, and he had 2 touchdowns and 1 interception. The real story about this game was Mayan Williams. He basically ran for 200 yards and 5 touchdowns. The run game is what really made the difference in this game, which is why they won by 39 points. And then the defense did look a little shaky at times, but I think they played very good. Still Chambers did his thing. He was all over the field. And honestly, without that muffed punt by Emeka Egbuka, I'm pretty sure Rutgers would have only had 3 points in this game, so I have to give him credit where credit's due. And now we move on to Georgia at my number 3. I honestly had a rough time with this because I was thinking about putting Clemson above Georgia. I'm not going to lie, but I couldn't do it because I know if Georgia and Clemson played, I do think Georgia would win that game. So I kept Georgia ahead, even though Clemson had an impressive win against NC State. I did think NC State was also overrated, so that does tone it down a little bit, and it was at home. I think Clemson's 37-0. Yeah, 37 game win streak at home. So it's kind of like a given that they were going to win that game. But back to Georgia. What are they doing? They almost lost to Missouri. They were losing the entire game, ended up winning in the end because Missouri is a really bad team, and they're probably the worst team in the SEC, which is kind of alarming, or the second worst. I think Vanderbilt might be worse than Mizzou, but again, they were losing this game from start to basically the end, and they didn't have a touchdown till the middle of the fourth quarter. Stetson Bennett looked horrible. They weren't running the ball well. They were making mistakes. This is basically the Kent State game, except they were playing an SEC team, and this is what happens when you play an SEC team instead of a MAC team. And again, I'm gonna say this, if Georgia doesn't play better, if they play like this against the rest of their schedule, they're gonna lose a few games. Do I think that's gonna happen? No. I think Georgia can lose a game. They'll probably lose a game and then probably lose to Alabama in the conference championship game, because I really just don't think they're gonna beat Alabama, especially if they play like that. Their defense is definitely beatable, and their offense seemingly isn't that good. And I think if Will Anderson, Jordan Battle, and Turner go against this team, I just think they're gonna tear them up. So Georgia's got to do something because they look horrendous. And may I remind you, Georgia did not win this game. Missouri lost this game to bad play calling, and they couldn't put Georgia away. They could have got a couple touchdowns, but they settled for field goals. Missouri definitely lost this game. But moving on, again, we got Clemson. They beat NC State. It was very impressive. DJ looked a lot better. Their defense played a lot better than last week. Clemson's kind of catching their stride, and now I kind of think they might only lose one game, or they might go undefeated with the schedule that they have. And you just might see them in the college football playoff again. Now, if they do get to the playoff, they'll probably be in the 4th spot or 3rd spot. And I don't really think that they're going to be able to beat Alabama, Georgia, or Ohio State. But I still have them as the closest team to those teams, because I definitely think that they're better than Michigan. Michigan, by the way, is my 5th team. They ended up beating Iowa 27-14. And I'm going to be honest, I am surprised Iowa scored 14 points in this game. I know they scored a touchdown really late or something like that. But yeah, Blake Corum did his thing in this game. He ran all over the Hawkeyes. They really couldn't stop him that much. They had a couple big stops, one on 4th down. But to be honest, Michigan didn't make as many errors as I thought they would. I thought J.J. McCarthy would have a harder time. I thought he would throw an interception and fumble the ball a couple times. I think they did fumble the ball once, but overall, it was a solid game for Michigan. It was a good win, and I'm not taking anything away from them. And then after them, I got Oklahoma State. Now, Oklahoma State went right into Baylor and smacked them 36-25. took Baylor out of the game. Sanders played a great game, and I'm just overall surprised in Oklahoma State's defense. I really thought that it was going to take a really big hit when Jim Knowles left, but it really hasn't. They've been playing decent, and I know Baylor doesn't have the best offense, but that defense made stops when they really needed to, and they forced Baylor into situations that they didn't want to be in, and they just played a really great, complete game from start to finish, and Baylor really never had a chance since the opening kick. Sitting right behind Oklahoma State, I have USC. Now, USC kind of played down to Arizona State in this game, especially beginning. Arizona State was able to move the ball, and it was a very close game, like at the half. And you see, the thing with USC, again, they have an offense. Their defense has been playing better than usual, but in this game, you could kind of tell they have the same issues that Oklahoma had when Lincoln Riley was there. They're giving up the big plays, they're missing easy assignments, and just all that type of stuff. And eventually, it's going to bite them when they play good teams down the stretch like UCLA, Oregon, Washington, just anyone in the Pac-12. If they play any of them, they're going to have issues because of that defense, so they're going to have to keep up because of that offense. But nonetheless, they won this game, and they're still undefeated. Can't say the same about the next team. I have Utah sitting right behind them at the 8th spot, and they beat Oregon State pretty convincingly. They won 42-16. They also played a pretty good game, and you know what? USC played Oregon State, and they only won 17-14, and then Utah comes in 42-16. So you know what, I do kind of think Utah is a little better than USC right now, but they have that one loss to Florida that still looks bad. That's why I'm keeping them behind just for right now. After Utah, I have Tennessee sitting at 9. They didn't play this week, but I still believe that they're better than Ole Miss. Ole Miss, they actually beat Kentucky today at home. They won 22-19. They looked okay. Jackson Dart played okay. Kentucky kind of made a lot of mistakes, especially at the end. They could have had a touchdown, but there was a penalty, and it brought the touchdown back, and then Will Levis fumbled the ball because one of the offensive linemen just let the dude run right by him, hit his arm, came out, they picked it up, and that was the end of the game. Lane Kiffin was not happy either. He was pretty upset in the post-game interview on how they played, because I think he knows that they can play a lot better, and they've been winning by like the skin of their teeth like every single week. But like I said before, Kentucky and Ole Miss both overrated, but Ole Miss did get the win. That's why I have them sitting in the top 10. And after them, I have Penn State. I pulled Penn State down like 3 spots because they only beat Northwestern 17-7, and I really just don't know how I feel about Penn State. They're very inconsistent with how they play. They can either play really good or they could just play awful, and they played awful against a really bad Northwestern team that had no business keeping it this close. They should have at least had 30-40 points in this game. After Penn State, I have Oregon. Oregon ended up beating Stanford at home. Not really much to say. They played pretty good on defense. Stanford didn't score that much, and Oregon seemed like they had a good consistency throughout this game. Bo Nix played particularly well, which with him, it's a mixed bag. You either get a guy that's going to throw 4 interceptions, or you're going to get a guy that throws 4 touchdowns and looks good. They were able to get the run game going early, which I also think helped them out. And honestly, if I was Brian Shaw right now, I would be really fearful of losing my job. He hasn't been winning at Stanford, and I think they're about tired of him. Even though he's got a long history there, I just think he should be on the hot seat. He's got to start winning a few of these games. Then moving on to the biggest upset of the week is TCU. I have TCU climbing all the way to the 13th spot. They destroyed Oklahoma 55-24. Now granted, Dylan Gabriel, Oklahoma's starting quarterback, got hurt, and then they brought in Bevel, I think that's what his name is, and he did not play well at all. But regardless, if Dylan Gabriel played this whole game, I still think TCU would have won. Max Duggan played the best game of his life. He was running all over them. He was being able to pass the ball. They were able to do whatever they wanted. TCU's offense was clicking on all cylinders. Their defense was playing hungry. Even though I don't think TCU's defense is that good, they're very athletic and they're always attacking. And I think they're definitely a team to watch out for down the road. And honestly, I don't know what's wrong with Oklahoma. Brent Venables has to do something about that defense. It's playing the same, if not worse, than it was playing last year. And he has to fix those issues before Oklahoma's even going to start winning games, because right now they are just embarrassing themselves against every team they play, and they're probably going to lose to Texas. I'm not gonna lie, if Quinn Ewers plays in that game, they're gonna lose. So there's definitely some issues with Oklahoma. They were ranked like 6th a few weeks ago, and now look where they're at. They're not ranked, lost 2 in a row. It's a pretty bad situation. And then the Friday night game, we got UCLA and Washington. UCLA won this game at home in the Rose Bowl 40-32. This game was really not that close. It does look close, but it wasn't that close. UCLA was running away with it. Charbonnet was playing well, DTR was playing well. They were efficient. The defense was playing well. Penn was confused on a lot of plays. He threw like 2 interceptions and they had a few other turnovers. And overall, it was just a really sloppy game by Washington. But they did try to make that comeback in the end, so I have to commend them for that. And also, the reason why I have TCU, UCLA, and all those teams like where they're at is just because they're undefeated and then they beat quality teams. And now a lot of teams in that like 10 to 15 area also lost. So that's why I had big jumps made for all of them. And ironic enough, there's only 2 more undefeated teams behind UCLA, and I'm going to get to those teams in a second. After them, I have Kentucky, and we already talked about Kentucky. They lost, and I dropped them from, I think I had them 8th or 9th all the way to 15th, since then I lost on 3 on the road. Then after them I have Kansas State. Kansas State ended up playing Texas Tech. They won that game 37-28. Adrian Martinez had a solid game, I thought, especially on the ground. He had 171 yards and Deuce Vaughn had 170 put together. This team, when they're running like that, they're basically unstoppable. Texas Tech couldn't really do much, and I can't really blame them. Their defense had no idea how to stop either of them. And then right behind Kansas State, I have Mississippi State. Mississippi State ended up playing Texas A&M, and they ended up beating Texas A&M 42-24. And like I said all the time, Texas A&M is overrated. They are overrated. I don't have them in the rankings anymore. Will Rogers tore that team up. Their defense didn't look good. Their offense obviously didn't look good. And Texas A&M is probably going to lose more than 4 games. They're playing Alabama next week, and they're going to get throttled in that game too. So they're going to be on a nice little losing streak. After them, I got NC State. NC State didn't play that good of a game. I did pick them to lose. I knew they would lose by around 10 points today, and they did lose by 10 points, 30-20. We already talked about this. O'Leary didn't look that good in this game. He made too many mistakes and just wasn't accurate with the football at all. And then right after them, I got BYU. BYU had a scare against Utah State. I think that was played a couple days ago, and they were actually losing this game, and then they finally pulled out in the end, and they won 38-26 at home. And after them, I have the Kansas Jayhawks. They beat Iowa State 14-11. Jalen Daniels did not look good in this game. He finally played a good defense, and he kind of showed some weakness, which was expected. I knew he was getting a little too much hype for what he was, but nonetheless, it's great for Kansas, and I have them sitting right inside the top 20. I also really hope the AP voters rank Kansas, because I think they deserve it after starting 5-0. And then after them, I have Wake Forest. I actually have Wake Forest out of my rankings, and they just beat Florida State on the road, so I put them right back in. They look convincing in this game. Hartman had a great showing, and it was a good bounce back game after that loss to Clemson. I did pick Wake Forest to win this game, and they ended up doing it 31-21. But I do feel like Jordan Travis outplayed Hartman, which is a weird thing. But then they also fumbled 3 times, and they lost one of them. But Travis had 3 touchdowns, so I think they just needed someone else on the offense, and the defense is step up. Now these next couple spots are going to kind of be controversial. I have LSU above Washington, and I was kind of hesitant to do that since LSU only beat Auburn 21-17, even though it was on the road. Auburn is not a good team, but then Washington, they really did not play well against UCLA, and UCLA struggled with like every game that they played this season. So that's kind of why I put LSU above them. I do think LSU has the better defense. When it comes to the offense, I think Washington has the better offense. So those two are kind of interchangeable. And then right behind them, we have a new team. Actually, 2 new teams entering the top 25 for me. 24, I actually have Cincinnati. I'm pulling Cincinnati in just because they've been looking decent. Even though they didn't play particularly well against Tulsa, they did get the win on the road. And honestly, with all the teams losing and all the teams coming in and all the upsets and whatever, it was kind of hard to leave them out. It was kind of hard to put any other team in. I didn't want to put Florida in, Notre Dame, North Carolina, or anyone like that, because North Carolina still doesn't have any defense, and I still think Cincinnati's better than a lot of those teams. So that's why they're at the 24th spot. And then at the 25th spot, I have Syracuse. Syracuse won the day 59-0. I'm not even going to talk about that game much, but Syracuse is undefeated with a couple decent wins. And I know not much people are talking about them, but Dino Babers, this might have been his last year if he didn't have a good year, and he picked a good time to step up and get as much as he can out of his kids. And I honestly just think Syracuse being 5-0 and them being consistent and winning deserves them being in the top 25. All in all, this was a kind of a wacky week, and I enjoyed it. I watched about 8 to 10 games sitting at home on my computer, and it's kind of awesome to see some parity in college football, kind of like this, of a lot of new teams coming in, a lot of new teams going out, and overall, I just think it's great for the sport. But with that being said, that's going to be the end of the video, guys. Please leave a like and a comment what you thought in the comment section below. Let me know what I got wrong, and always be sure to support me. All my links are in the description, including my Patreon. Subscribe there if you want to help the channel out. With that being said, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.